Well, thank you, and I don't expect we'll have a bit of disturbance for a while people start streaming in. I like to have a calm image, sort of calm and relaxed before the carnage begins. So, I want to be clear. I guess I'll use the opportunity while people are still streaming in to tell, I've been to India once before, and I had one of the defining moments of my life when this happened. I was in an office building, and next to us was an office building, and there was a road out there. And as I was running this workshop, I had the learners doing an activity, so I had a chance to glance out the window. And I've been glancing around several days, but this time I glanced out the window, and I saw something that just let me know that I was someplace new. There was an elephant walking by on the road. Now, that's just not something you see in the US. So that was it's sort of, you're not in Kansas anymore type of moment. And it really helped me understand. So I want to start with a question. What? Yeah. I want to start with a question for you all. I want to ask, do you believe in magic? Now, I don't mean stage magic, state of mind. I don't mean the warmth you feel in your heart watching your children play on a summer afternoon before you're going to eat dinner in front of the TV. I mean magic, summoning up demons to conduct tasks for you and gazing in crystal balls at far distances. Do you believe in that sort of magic? I'm not surprised to hear more people say yes than I typically hear in the US. But I want to tell you I do. But it's because Arthur C. Clarke famously said, any truly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I think we're there. We can summon up powerful programs to do tasks for us and gaze through webcams at far distances. The limits are no longer the technology. We can really bring almost anything anywhere we want to. The limits are now between our ears and sometimes in our pocketbooks. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do with this power? And I think that's partly what we're talking about through this conference, and I really appreciate the chance to be here with you, and thank Biplav for the chance to come and talk with you. So today I'm talking about mobile and a little bit of experience. I've designed a couple mobile apps, have been part of designing a couple mobile augmented reality games, have done some mobile reports, written a couple books on mobile learning. So that's the basis I'm drawing on trying to present this to you. It's not about learning. We don't learn for intellectual self-gratification. We learn to be able to do things we can't do now, to make decisions we can't do now. And going forward, I want to suggest that just knowing stuff isn't going to make a difference in our world. The ability to make decisions that we can't make now, to deal with ambiguity, is what's going to make a difference going forward. That's an editorial soapbox. So I want to talk about supporting people in achieving their goals and their ability to do things differently. As we move up in our ability to do, we move from novices. When we don't know what we're doing or why it's important, that's when we need courses. But as we advance and become more expert, we begin to understand why it's important, and now we need to grasp what it is, the information we need. We need support in performing rather than the full formal learning. And as we become expert, there isn't anybody who can give us the information. We need other people to collaborate with to continue to advance our understanding. So the value of the formal learning dissipates, and the value of informal learning kicks in. And we want to keep this whole perspective, and particularly for those of you from the organizational learning perspective, too many of the learning units in organizations focus purely on the formal learning and not looking at the informal learning. But this actually plays a role in formal education too, because gradually we want to be releasing responsibility to our learners. As I suspect, essentially the goal of the MOOCs that Stephen and George were talking about, they're assuming in some sense the ability of these skills, but I think we want to help facilitate them, acquire them, so they can participate in such environments and take their own meaning for them. But we want to give that ability, scaffold that development. Really, I like George talking about the ecosystem. Increasingly, I'm trying to find performance ecosystems where people can be focused on the task at hand and have the resources they need. In organizations, it starts with e-learning, putting courses on a web with a quiz or a virtual classroom, but immediately we've got to start talking about improved learning design and supporting performance support and bringing in the e-community where people can start supporting one another. Underpinning it, some greater integration, some content models, some architectures, and then broader distribution, the ability to reach people at the moment of need, not just when they're at their desktop, to create a full performance ecosystem. And right now we're talking about the broader distribution point is really where in the broad system the focus is. Now I want to thank George for setting the stage for the importance of mobile and stealing some of my thunder. Thank you very much, but I don't really mind. This from the same report, he was showing the growth of mobile internet, but a lot of mobile applications, the ramp up just in the past few years of their usage indicates the change. And if you go to something like the International Telecommunications Union that tracks sort of global distribution, even last year, actually 2 years ago now, they were finding 90% of the world's population has access to mobile networks. Even in rural areas, 80% of the population has this access. In the developed world, purchases have flattened. Not because there's no longer any demand, but because it's saturated. There are more subscriptions to mobile services than there are people. And in the developing world, the growth is still phenomenal. So we understand why mobile is important. The question is, what do we do to take advantage of it? So show me your mobiles. Go ahead, let them out. What do we got? That's an Android device. Okay, we see some Blackberries here, Androids, MacBook Airs. I see I don't see any tablets. Anybody got iPads here or some other? Oh, okay. I knew they'd be out there. I knew it. Okay. So what's common? And by the way, you can use this to mute the ringer. I don't care if you're using them. I just don't want the ringing to disturb anybody. What's common? How do we deal with this vast, disparate set of devices in a coherent and consistent way? So we've got to abstract and find what's core to these. And to me, what they are is mobile processors with memory. They have some way you can put input to them. Some of them have keyboards, like the Black Book. Some of them have touch screens. And they can communicate back to you with screens and with audio and even vibration. Increasingly, they have sensors. Does anybody have a mobile device that doesn't have a camera in it? Are any out there? Oh, one. There's still a few left. But increasingly they do. They can sense the world. They have microphones. They can record. They even have devices that can know where you are. They can capture your context and start doing unique things. And they're connected to the world. It may be through the phone network. It may be through Wi-Fi. Sometimes it's only with a cable. The original Palm, remember, was connect by cable. You synced it. But it could connect, take the information you collected during the day and put it out there. And the reverse, and then you could put information on your desktop and it would come into your device and you could load it. Now, they do one other thing. And I love the tale of how Jeff Hawkins designed the original Palm Pilot, which was really the first successful mobile device. I don't even know this. He figured out what's the right size. It's got to be small enough I can carry it with me, but it's large enough that people can do useful things with it. And he figured out that size and he carved a block of wood to that size. And he carried around that block of wood with him. Everywhere he went, and he sort of said, what would I do with this to make me smarter right now? A real great anthropological approach to design. And he came up with those 4 core applications: contacts or addresses, memos or notes, your calendar or your events, and your tasks or to-dos. It was rather ironic for me that when the iPhone came out, it only had 2 of those 4 in it. I'm just like, what were they thinking? But they do other things. They can play media, typically, audio and video. They can support content presentation to you. They can have some calculations. They can play games. And they can often connect and communicate with it. So this is sort of the core things. And one of the interesting things, David Polk says it's not really the smartphone. What distinguishes, because even your average cell phone these days typically has a camera and has some applications that run on it. So he talks about the app phone that you can customize by downloading your own software onto it to make it. And even if 2 of us have the same phones, I will bet you dollars to donuts they don't have the same apps on them. We have different needs, but that customization plays a role in taking advantage of mobile going forward. Now, when we were doing the 2007 Mobile Learning Research Report, there was a team of us, and we were debating whether laptops, like the Air, actually qualify. And at the end of the day, we decided it didn't, with a caveat. And actually, that caveat's mine. By and large, it's just a desktop that's anywhere you are, which is not really about mobile learning. With a caveat, if it's doing something unique to where you are. But what's the difference between how you use the handheld? Now, when Palm succeeded, they tried to capture the principles that led to success. And so developers would have some guidelines about how to make successful devices. They captured that in a document called Zen of Palm, which is still available on the web. And if you are interested in mobile, I strongly recommend you read it. It's short, it is fun, it's got some Zen koans in it that help you get your mind around mobile. But they also captured some data. And to me, the interesting thing is the difference between a laptop and a mobile. The laptop you access only a few times a day, but you tend to be at it at long periods of time doing some serious work. Whereas your mobile device, you whip out many times a day, do something quick and put it away. Now, that to me is the argument why I say mobile is not about courses on a phone. And you find most people who talk about mobile agree. So what is it if it's not about courses on a phone? Well, I want to develop that. I want to suggest that to really take advantage of mobile, you have to think differently. You've got to get out of the mindset of content delivery. And you've got to start thinking about how do we support people in their goals. Now, before we get there, we have to think about, that was capturing the laptop and the mobile device, but now there's these intermediate devices, these tablets. Are they like the small mobile device? I want to suggest they're not. I don't know about you, but my phone goes with me everywhere. My tablet, not everywhere. A lot of places, but not everywhere. And it's unlikely in a store I'm going to whip out my tablet and look up some quick information and pop it back in my pocket. Not just because it doesn't fit in my pocket, but mostly. So how do we characterize this in a way that gives us a handle on deciding how do we take advantage of these? And it came to me, I'm going to go back. The relationship with the laptop is a lot like a desktop. It's at arm's length. My mobile device is right here. What I call the pod, because the tablet is the pad. I don't know what you call that laptop. It's the place, it's some place where you're at. And so the question is, what are the important dimensions? And I tried to characterize this, and this isn't research-based. This is my attempt to make sense of the world. So I think about intimacy. My tablet is also here with me, like my mobile device is, whereas the laptop's at arm's length. But the tablet, oftentimes I can do quick things with it. Well, no, I don't. I don't tend to use my tablet like that. The quick access that I do with the mobile device is not the same as I do with the tablet. So I try and say the laptop is not really immediate or intimate. The tablet is intimate, but it's not immediate, whereas the mobile device is immediate. Then I was trying to figure out what would qualify that last part of the quadrant. I was thinking of run up to a kiosk at an airport quickly. Now, you don't know they have them here. You don't have the kiosks in the airport to get your boarding pass like you do in the US. But there, you run up, quickly give it the information, print out your boarding pass, and you run off. It's immediate, but it's not intimate. But that's not really the important space. It's looking at this difference. I want to suggest, by the way, that when we take equivalent courses, the equivalent content, the equivalent learning experience on a desktop or a laptop, and then we redefine it for a touchscreen interface, same otherwise learning goals, same learning objectives, I'm suspecting that the learning experience is going to be different and potentially more effective. I think there's some really interesting research to be done there. But I don't think of, so tablets fall in an intermediate space for me, where there's certain times where you need the big screen and you can deal with the slightly less mobility. We're seeing this in airplane cockpits, we're seeing it in hospitals, we're seeing it in a few other places where this makes sense. And carrying around to meetings so you have a richer experience, but it's not quite the quick access. But we're still sorting that out. We are tool users. We adapt the environment to us, we don't adapt to the environment. We build shelters to protect us from the elements, and clothing, aren't you glad? But that's adapting the physical world. We've done amazing things. We've got hammers and saws to give us tools that we wouldn't want to accomplish tasks we wouldn't want to do with our hands. But what's the mental equivalent? Now, you have to understand our brains. They're really good at pattern matching. Our brains abstract meaning, find the gist, detect discrepancies in patterns. They're really bad at doing rote things. We don't remember books word for word. We remember the story. And we have limits on the complex calculations we do. From the point of view of a problem, just us and sort of the executive monitoring function, we're not nearly as formidable an opponent as us augmented by all that rote capability and complex computation. Our brains don't do well. Now, that's not unique to mobile. What mobile adds is the ability to bring that anywhere, anyone. But this is what we're talking about, is augmenting our capabilities so we're more effective in learning and in performance. When I try and make sense of how to look at the capabilities mobile delivers us, I try and get down to the core affordances that the technology provides, the key capabilities. And the first one is content. We can access or store information on that device that helps us. We can also have it do complex computations our brains can't do. And content, for all that content isn't necessarily a learning experience, it can be very useful in the moment. It can augment a learning experience. It can support performance. The next step is computation, where the device we have a mixed initiative dialogue. We give it some information, it reacts and provides some more information. We may customize that information. It's calculation, it's decision trees, really powerful opportunities to augment our thinking. And finally, communication. We don't just reach out and touch the person closest, but we can reach out and touch the right person. We can interact with them. None of those are unique to mobile. There's opportunities given to us by digital technology, but what digital technology gives us, what mobile technology gives us, is the ability to take this anywhere and anyone we need it. But to capture the pictures, to take pictures and capture the immediate context, whether dynamic with video or static with cameras, to record audio perhaps, and to know where we are, and maybe even when we are, gives us new opportunities, because the fifth implicit C here is combinations thereof. Snapping a picture of this and saying, I've never seen this before, and uploading it to a colleague who may have, and say, have you seen this? And they go, yeah, and they can help you. And so we share the capture and communicate around it, and we can get more effective. Or we can take our context and start delivering content uniquely relevant to where we are. We'll explore this a little bit more as we go forward. The first opportunity we have is to break up the learning experience, particularly in corporate learning, but sometimes even in formal education. We have this model where we get people together for a short period of time and dump a bunch of knowledge on them. And they actually do better on the test, but it dissipates really quickly. This is your college experience, by the way. Remember cramming for the test? You get the Father Guido Sarducci thing. Most learning is memorization. So I'm going to create a university in which you learn what the average college graduate remembers 5 years after graduating. Going to take like 5 minutes. Costs $20. The point is, it's going away. But what works? The way our brains work is we activate two concepts together. And if we want them to stick, by activating them together, we strengthen the relationship between them. But we can only take so much activation a day before we need to sleep. So if we need to build those associations, we have to reactivate them over time, build them a little bit more, let's get some sleep, build them a little bit more, get some sleep. So we space the learning. We may not actually perform as well on the immediate test, but it sticks around until we need it. And I want to suggest that if you're doing a bunch of learning that isn't going to stick around, why are you bothering? What a colossal waste of time and money. So we need to start doing this. And now we have access to people whenever and wherever they are, and we can start developing experiences, learning experiences that are spread over time. Activation. In some sense, formal learning has that easier because we do have semesters and sorts of long periods of interaction with people. Although we often switch topics every week instead of revisiting material. We have to be considered, thinking about that. But one of the opportunities with mobile. And in fact, we had a face-to-face course on negotiation. I did this with my partner's Knowledge Anywhere. And the client was actually a mobile technology provider, and they were rather embarrassed they didn't have any mobile learning themselves. So they brought us in and said, well, we have this face-to-face learning course. We don't want to replace it. We want to support it. What can you do? Now, I like the Van Maribor's model of learning. There's the knowledge you need and the complex problems you apply it to. So here, the subject matter expert had identified 19 things he figured learners needed to know cold. I asked him, could you please keep it down below 25? He gave me 19. A little bit high, but whatever. And so that was the first thing we built, was a quiz question, and you could respond, and then you could get the feedback. You go back and try again, or you could go through the rest of them. Notice this is not a smartphone. 7 lines by 15 characters, real challenge. This subject matter expert was very charismatic, very knowledgeable, very good writer. Really eloquent, long sentences. I got to fit it on that. One of the lessons was boiling it down again and again to get it to fit. It didn't have to totally fit. We could have some scrolling, but we wanted to minimize it. By the way, that effort pays off for the web in general, and it pays off for the learner in general. We overwrite our stuff way too much in our learning experiences. So that was a way to augment a formal course. But wait, there's more. If you know me, and particularly if you hear me talk tomorrow about game design, I don't think rote knowledge is going to make any difference in the ability to do things. But first, you've got to be applying it to make it relevant, and you want to be applying it to have it transfer outside to be able to do things you can't do now. So he had 10 scenarios. We placed those on a phone as well. We'd have a story that sets it up, a situation that would precipitate a decision. He had a model of 5 different ways you'd respond. You could choose the one you thought was best. You'd see a little bit of how that would play out in prose. He felt learners didn't understand, how do you map confront less direct to what you would actually say. He wanted them to see it, and then they get feedback. Not right or wrong, but most effective, maybe less effective. And we built that in. Now that's augmenting the formal learning. But now I want to make the transition to the fact that what if you are facing a negotiation, you haven't had the course, or it's been a long time since you had the course, or you're not fully completed the course. So what can we do to support them in performing? He had 10 reminders about doing a negotiation. We made that available. He had also broken up the negotiation process into 4 steps, each with 4 sub-steps. Each of those sub-steps had 2 or 3 questions you should be asking yourself at that stage of the negotiation. I hope you understand that having some guidance about questions you should ask yourself is productive in helping you manage the process. But 4 by 4, 16 by 3 questions, there's no way you're going to remember all 32 to 48 questions you have. So we made that available. So you could just navigate through it, find those questions, and support yourself in the process if you didn't happen to have access to the resources. That book you'd filed away on the shelf and then happened to throw out because you were cleaning your office. It was now available for you. So this is the type of thinking that you should be trying to get in your mind when you're thinking about how do we take advantage of mobile. And again, multiple frameworks. I was looking at how people actually solve problems in the world, and this comes from hermeneutic philosophy. You act in the world when you can. You try and get things well practiced, like tying your shoes, so that you don't have to even think about it. In fact, if you do think about it, you totally screw up the tying your shoes because it's so well practiced, you get conscious of it, you break. But when there are things that happen that you have to solve where your well-practiced things don't work, and then you have a breakdown, and you have to consciously reflect. And increasingly, I'm going to suggest that the innovation that we're looking for in AdJex is developing people able to deal more and more with the sort of complex problems that are occurring in the world. It's not rote things that are going to work. It's handling these breakdowns, coming up with repair, and if you repair it, reflecting so it then becomes part of your repertoire. And the reason I bring that up is because I, as I want to do, wanted to figure out what could we do with technology to support people through these phases. When you have the gap, you have the information you need. You'd love to just find the answer and go back to work. But sometimes the answer doesn't exist, and then you have to go into the problem solving. And then if you find the answer, it'd be nice if you give the answer for everybody else so they don't have to solve it themselves. This is now for performance support, not formal learning, by the way. And so I was looking at what you might do. Information resources. This is when people Google things or look on the portal for help. They might ask people, see if somebody has the answer. This is where you get the prairie dog phenomenon in the office. People pop up over the cubicle, go, hey, how do you do this? But now we might want to ask the right person, not the person who happens to be next door, may not have the answer. Sometimes we need a total skill shift, and we'll take a course, but that's a small part of the possible solution space. Now, if we don't find the answer, we go into problem solving. Now we need different types of support. We may need data to look for patterns. Remember, that's what our brains do well. Look for patterns to help us solve it. We might need models to apply that map and give us guidance about how to solve them, like this. We might need people, but these are different people now. There wasn't anybody with the answer. We would have found them at step one. So now we're looking for people who might help us analyze the data, a statistical analyst, or a process facilitator who helps guide us through the process, or somebody with a vested interest in the solution. And if we do find it, we should go populate those information resources we checked the first time so nobody else has to find the same problem. I like the GPS as a model for performance support. How many have used a GPS or seen them in operation? Those of you who haven't, check it out. They're wonderful. They know where you're at because they've got a global positioning system chip in it. And they know where you want to go because you tell it, I need to go here. And then they guide you along the way. Turn left in 200 feet. Turn left here. You were supposed to turn left back there. But they don't care. That's okay, I can deal with this. All right, turn right here, idiot. But note that they don't develop your understanding. They'll get you there, but they won't help you understand that area any better. Now, when Gloria Geary, who was the guru who essentially started the electronic performance support system movement, always said that not only would they help you in the moment, but they'd develop you over time. And yet, I have yet to see a performance support system that actually cashes in on that promise. And yet we can do it. It'll be easy to add a layer. You say what you're interested in. I'm interested in geography. I'm interested in demographics. I'm interested in whatever. And it could be pointing that out. It could be interested in helping you understand the neighborhood. This is a major thoroughfare. It connects this and that. It's not there, but it could be. And imagine this support for your tasks that your learners are trying to do. Whether they're trying to solve a problem, trying to help, they can intervene if they needed using appropriate channels. And this is the opportunity on the table. And these problems not just at the desktop, but wherever and whenever they are. How many are on Facebook or LinkedIn? Yeah, I don't know. Guys are much better than the US when it comes to that. How many of you use it for professional development? Oh, okay, pretty good. If those of you are not, what are you waiting for? There's groups who are talking in the same fields you are who will be sharing information, and you can be learning from them and helping them out and building a community. Twitter, how many are on Twitter? How many are twittering this presentation right now? I hope you're saying nice things. But again, how many use Twitter for professional development? Okay, good. A huge opportunity to be following people on Twitter who point to interesting things in your field, who you can ask questions of and you can help them. Again, a possible community. Skype. With my Internet Time Alliance colleagues like Jay and Harold and Jane and Charles, we have a Skype chat always open where we're tossing in questions and issues and thoughts and pointers. This is a professional obligation, but it's also a huge opportunity because, frankly, the more people you put on the task, the better things happen, whether it's more problem solved or better formal learning. Now, you've heard the expression, the room is smarter than the smartest person in the room. There's a caveat. If you manage the process right. If you don't, the room is as smart as the person with the most authority in the room or the most dominant person in the room. But if you manage the process right, good things happen. So one way to think about mobile is to take our formal learning, our performance support, our social learning, which is underpinned by our content management, knowledge management, learning management, social media systems, but making that available anywhere and anywhen. But there's an asterisk. There's an extra opportunity here. That alone would be valuable, by the way. That alone extends our learning experiences, extends our ability to perform in the world. But there's one opportunity we have additionally. And that's what I call the A-star realities. And in fact, George also, stealing my thunder, thank you very much, George, talked about augmented reality, where the world is annotated. If you have a mobile device with a GPS and a screen, you can ask for help. For instance, Yelp, I can say what restaurants are near me, and it can show me a map of where I am and tell me where the restaurants are near me. But it can go further. If I have a camera, I can hold it up, and it will look in this direction. It'll show what restaurants are there, and as I pan, any others will come up, and I can be on a street corner and go, oh, there's a McDonald's, no. Starbucks, no. Oh, really cool Indian food, let's go. And it can lead us there. There's extra information in the world. Now, most augmented reality is indeed where you are. Second huge missed opportunity is when you are. These devices know you put your calendar in there, right? I have a meeting. Now, what if we told what the meeting was about and it happened to be related to our goals? And it happened to know we were developing ourselves in this area. Imagine it prepared you. Alison Rosso talks about sidekicks and planners. Planners are things you prepare with or afterwards sum up with. So beforehand, you reactivate relevant knowledge so you're better prepared going into the meeting. Then we might provide a sidekick during the meeting to give you guidance to perform better. Both of those are real opportunities that we're not tacking into so much. But the one I'm really interested in is the last one. Because when we perform in the world, that's it. But what if we reflected on that afterwards? We were given a little self-evaluation rubric. How'd you do on this? Did you remember to do that? Or even connect you to a person. Hey, how'd that go? And then they're checking you off and developing you over time, a mentor. We can start taking those performance events in our lives and turn them into learning events. So that's augmented reality. The other one is alternate reality. And typically they're thought of as alternate reality games. Let me give an example. In this case, you've been hired as a salesperson. That's your boss who gives you a little pep talk before you start. It gives you a list of potential clients, some leads. And one wants X and one wants Y, and this one you have a phone number for, and this one you have an email, and you have to pick the right one. When you do, you contact them. And if you pick the right one, and they'll come back and give you some information they need. Then you go out to the website and find that information. If you pick the right thing and send it to them, they'll go to the next step and connect you to their tech person. And if that person will ask you some questions, and you go find the information they want, and if they're happy, that first person comes back and gives you an order, and you win. None of this is real. This is totally made up. There's a real website, but it's not for a real company. They've made it up to look like a real company for you to go cite the information. The clients don't exist. There's a system back there that takes your email and responds to it. But it's mixed initiative. Some of it's on phone, some of it's on email. It could be on text message. It's beginning, and so there's this whole parallel reality, alternate reality that isn't real, but it touches into your life like it is. By the way, if you've ever seen how many have seen the movie The Game with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn? It's a great example of alternate reality. It's a good movie. Now, this is not high art. This isn't a Merchant Ivory film. This is an edge-of-the-seat thriller. But this guy gets enrolled in this game, and strange things start happening in his life. People hand him stuff that he's never met or greet him and recognize him. Things appear in his house and have strange behaviors. And he has to piece this together and figure out the clues to figure out what's going on in the story. But in doing so, he's making decisions, right? Part of the learning activities. Imagine designing these. Well, this was training you to be a salesperson, to follow the right leads, to follow up. It doesn't play out right away like you did a desktop simulation. You send the email. The day later, you receive the voicemail from him telling him what he was looking for. It's much closer to the way you perform in the real world, starts developing your abilities to do this, and it scales. There's nobody necessary in this to make this happen. So that's where you start taking advantage of the unique part of mobile, the context sensitivity, and start building it into the world and augmenting the world in powerful ways to support our learning and our performance. You've got to grasp two things. You've got to grasp how we really think and learn. The myths that we follow about that content dump and knowledge test is going to lead to any meaningful change, we've got to get rid of. We've got to understand what really develops us, spacing over time, meaningful practice. We've got to understand how we really perform in the world and what sort of support really matters. When we grasp that and grasp the other thing, which is the technology we now have to hand, the magic, We have an opportunity literally in the palm of our hands. And this is the cheesiest stock photo you'll see in this presentation, I admit. But we really do. We have this opportunity in the palm of our hands to take advantage of it and start developing us more effectively, more frequently, in more contexts. Thank you very much. There, how was I in time?
Very good. Any questions?
No.
I have a question. Question is about the formal education and its, delivering that through mobile. Mobile has a limited form factor, and when you are in formal education, let's say a student of grade 8, 9, 10, and 11, he has to do a lot of stuff in formal education, and doing means writing, typing, and so on and so forth, and mobile seems to be, a limiting factor there. That is one sort of issue I have with mobile education. The second is, you talked about mobile, unlike tablet or PCs, is where you are and at what point in time you are, those two dimensions are available. So that can add value in learning. My question is that value addition for a child or a student who is learning trigonometry or quadratic equation or Newton's third law, how it is relevant.
Okay.
So there are two questions here.
Two questions. Yeah, expecting me here, jet lag, trying to be able to keep both of them. No, that's fine. So the first one was the size and the form factor. It was Elliot Soloway, way back when, who was one of the earliest proponents of digital devices in learning, who recognized that for K to 6 kids, laptops are just the wrong form factor. Their hands are too little, they can't manage it, and so he started doing stuff with palms and then, eventually the Windows Pocket PC type of things. Now, middle school is different. When they start getting bigger, they may need more, but there's a trade-off. Laptops are hard to carry around, they're awkward and stuff. You can't, even tablets you can whip out. Do you have a different device for creating content? I bought my iPad the first day, but I wasn't going to buy it when it was announced because I'm not a content consumption person, I'm a content creation. But by the time it was released, I had figured out how I was going to use it to make myself more powerful. Pages was announced, word processing, and OmniGraphal. I mind mapped George and Stephen's presentations, and I'll publish them. And that's for me, but I put them out there anyways. So you can use them for powerful activities. If you really want to do a large amount of typing, I don't write books on my iPad. I write them on a laptop or a desktop. But I'll take notes and write little bits of proposals and stuff on them, and I finally got a Bluetooth keyboard. We're going to start finding more form factors and find one that works in the classroom. So I think I'm not worried about the scope and scale, adapt it to the context, but I really like things that people can take out and do things and take notes with to take the learning experience outside. Now that gets to your second question, taking the learning experience outside. Learning doesn't, we don't perform in the classroom. I mean, when we're solving problems in the world, we're out in the world. How can we take these devices and make us more useful? Well, imagine we go out and capture pictures of something that we want to bring back to the classroom and share because they relate to what we're talking about. What if we want to interview somebody? We can capture it there. What if we were going around and we want to take notes? And augmenting reality, where we are, we can start being at a place, and imagine we're at some outdoor place and we're studying geology, we can see the geological formations that underpin where we are. So we start annotating the world with information relevant to what we're doing. So it's selected for where we are and what we're learning, and we can start bringing that to life and make a connection. A really important point for cognitive processing is making a connection between the real world and what we're learning in the classroom, which we too seldom do in real learning. They learn this abstract stuff and they have no understanding how it connects to the world.
So I fully agree what you are saying, but my question is that only the mobile-based learning can augment the learning that you are having. Otherwise, it cannot substitute and replace the wholesome learning that you want to have, in a formal education system.
I don't believe mobile is by itself a complete learning experience. I believe it's part of an overall learning experience. Like I say, it augments formal learning. It is not the source of all formal.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good noon to Dr. Clark and everyone. My question is, how could we transform formal knowledge into informal learner. You spoke about the formal
Right.
and informal.
I'm not
Knowledge.
right. I don't think you transform formal into formal. I think what you do is you prepare people with some formal learning to get some foundation upon which you build through informal learning. So that I don't believe all learning is informal. I think we don't recognize enough of the opportunities with informal learning, and I think we should start considering that in our learning design and scaffold people. And I want to develop learners' abilities to learn on their own, and I think we do that through modeling and release and those sorts of things. So I don't think the way we transform formal learning and informal learning is we give our learners the tools to transform themselves from recipients to participants to explorers and advancers. And I think mobile is mobile is a tool for the pedagogy. It's not the pedagogy itself. We've got to have enlightened pedagogies like, modified, MOOCs with the modifications that Stephen was considering to help connect it more directly to opportunities to address the limitations and take advantage of the powerful things that it's enabling. But we want to have the pedagogy right, and then we augment. It's strategic that mobile supports whatever pedagogy we use, and hopefully we choose enlightened pedagogies.
Yeah.
Who's Wait, do I see more differences, more similarities between mobile and?
From a socio-economic and cultural aspect, so take each country and each geography worldwide. Do you see more differences in the way people are learning through mobile, or do you see more similarities in the way people are learning?
Because, like I said, mobile is a tool, I think it very much ends up being used in a way that reflects the real context where it's being used. In Africa, they don't have as much ability to download data. They don't have data plans. What they're doing is they're preloading data onto the phones before they buy them with things like health, HIV awareness. So that's a totally different model than we might see in the US, where there's Wi-Fi networks and you're accessing information. And like LearningMate has a program where I can have something on my iPad and you all have iPads, and then I can shove it out to you and you can look at it and then I can ask a question. That's not going to happen in other places yet. So I'm seeing it reflecting, if it's well designed, it has to reflect the context it's in. And so the diversity of context we see is going to determine the diversity of mobile. And I do believe they are very diverse as yet, and will have to be.
Yeah, Clark, I wish to ask a question. The way that you put the presentation looks like the technology is driving pedagogies, but should it not be the other way around?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, that's just the point I'm making. Mobile is just a tool. You choose the pedagogy, and ideally you choose an advanced one, and then you adapt it. The only thing I was showing with the examples and the frameworks is to give you a bunch of ways to think outside the notion of a course on a phone. And so I was trying to show performance support and different delivery channels and a variety of things to awaken your mind to the opportunities to be adapted to your pedagogy. But yes, I couldn't agree more that mobile is only a tool to support what you want to be doing. It shouldn't drive it.
Dr. Clark, I have one question.
Okay, there.
Basically, the thing is, when we talk to education institutes, we do some stuff in the mobile space. And the response that we're getting from them is that a mobile or a tablet is essentially a consumption device. You don't get much feedback from the student. There's not much writing or note-taking that's happening. And they're scared that this makes education a very consumption-oriented thing. There's not much feedback that's coming back. What are the trends that you're seeing in this? How do we overcome this? Or is there a solution at all to it?
Well, I mean, textbooks are a consumption device, and yet they're using those in the classroom. One of the things that's possible is a richer form of content that's dynamic media as well. But they can also start embedding interactives. Last night they mentioned the innovation group was trying to come up with an EPUB format that included interactivity. My partner that I visited in Mumbai before already has it working on their iPads. So that's one thing. But increasingly, it's also about tools. I can send students out to capture X and send students out to capture Y, and they can come back and they'll have captured different things, and we'll share and we can reflect. So again, I think the limitation of their minds is they're still used to a content-centric model, and we have to help them understand that these tools are not just content delivery. There's huge advantages. You know, I see my kids carrying around a backpack full of books, you know, and it's ruining their bodies at a very young age. I'd much rather than just have a tablet with all the books on it. But if that was all it was limited to, it would be a win. But that's nowhere near tapping the opportunities that's on the table.
Just to follow up on that, another area that they focus on is they say writing ability is a real loss in the mobile. In terms of it's just, you know, you type and it's very difficult. Where do you see that? Do we see styluses coming into play, or do we see something on that front?
They're actually finding that the kids who are texting, actually their literacy skills are better than the ones who are not. Even though they're using that abbreviated texties or whatever you call it on the phones, it's still, they're communicating verbally, and it's developing verbal communication skills. And so I don't think, the barriers that the other gentleman was talking about, I see that we got to make sure that it's not interfering with their ability to express themselves, but any expression seems to be empirically leading to improved ability to think about how to communicate effectively. And we don't want to leave that to chance.
Thanks.